All right, everybody. Good afternoon. Hope you guys are doing well. And I know that most Seahawks fans are thinking about the grub firing earlier today. They're thinking about replacements. They're thinking about stuff that doesn't really have a lot to do with yesterday's Rams game, but the show goes on. And besides, this is an opportunity to kind of look back at the whole season and take measure of where everything sits. So, Snap Count Monday, we're going to go through with it. Starting with the offensive side of the ball here, you can see that 55 offensive snaps was the count, which is honestly pretty low, which is amusing because that was one of the best games the offense played all year. And our snap count was in line with last week's miserable performance against the Bears or the 51 snap game against the Bills. So I think that it's a little bit of an aberration. I think it's a product of the fact that the Seahawks offense in yesterday's game was either really effective or not effective at all. They would either go three and out or they would quickly score. So I think it's a little bit of a fluke that they were able to have such good end results despite having relatively few number of plays. But 1,100 plays on the season. Not bad. That's not bad. I've seen worse. I think that on the whole, we probably squeezed out a few more plays per game this season on average than we had in previous seasons. So that's good. That's a good sign. So let's see how we got there. Again, with the offense here, we got running back. And in this particular game, Charbonnet obviously carried most of the load, but you can see there was a comfort level with Kenny McIntosh unlocked over the last 5 weeks of the season that was not there before. He actually played meaningful snaps and got meaningful carries. So that's a good development that I like. And even though Ken Walker will almost certainly be back next year, I'd love to see us find a way to use Kenny McIntosh more going forward, even if it's just 8 snaps a game. So obviously the numbers are skewed because look at all the games that Ken Walker missed. He missed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. So it's a little bit tricky to really draw any calculations from that, but you can see that the Seahawks did a pretty good job of not putting too much on any one running back. Charbonnet played less than 52 snaps, 52% of the snaps, and Walker played a little less than 43. Probably would have been higher if Walker had stayed healthy, and Charbonnet would have been a lot less, but at the same time, you play your best players more. That's just common sense, so this seems okay to me. Wide receivers. So this game, I think the thing that really stands out is that Tyler Lockett saw what I believe is, yes, a season low, less than 30 snaps. He got 29. His previous season low was 30. So in his probably final game as a Seahawk, possibly final game in the NFL, he did see a reduced workload. He made a couple nice catches, but he just doesn't have that one last big game in him the way that some people would have liked to have seen. And I mean, I guess that's okay. At the end of the day, we're trying to win a game. We're not trying to allow Tyler Lockett to have his retirement tour in an overly ostentatious way. And you play the game that is in front of you. So DK Metcalf plays almost the whole game. JSN plays basically the whole game. Bobo gets his small dose of snaps. Actually caught a touchdown this week, so he did something. Sorry about that. They are losing their minds back there, my dogs. And Derek Young gets 1 snap. So again, it's a little bit hard because Metcalf missed 2 and almost a half a game because of an injury. So deriving anything from his snap count is a little bit tricky, but played about 76% of the snaps. If he didn't miss time, it definitely would have been more than 80%. Lockett ends up right around 70%, which makes sense given the state that he's in. And the way the offense was going with regards to how JSN was developing as a player. And JSN gets 86%. And next year, that number could be higher. He could be playing over 90% of the snaps next year easily. Depends on what kind of offense we decide to run here. But if we go 11 personnel consistently, I don't see how you ever take JSN off the field in 11 personnel. and hopefully he can improve a little bit as a run blocker so he can justify all those snaps, not just the passing snaps. But the way things went for JSN this year, I don't see how you keep him off. Bobo, 29% of the snaps, over 300 snaps. So he had ample opportunity this year to prove that he was turning into something long term. And for my money, it didn't really happen. He's workable as a number 4 receiver, but expecting anything more than that from him is unrealistic. And honestly, part of me wants to even try to do better than that. Like maybe he should be your number 6 receiver, just somebody who hangs around for special teams and never plays on offense. Just too limited, and there's not enough going on there for us to feel good about. So yeah, good shot for Bobo this year. He played enough to contribute, and he just didn't do that much. And nobody else really played significant snaps. In fact, Chenault isn't even on the team anymore. All right, so tight end. Noah Fant played more than half the game, 35 snaps, significant chunk. AJ Barner not far behind. Seems like there was a comfort level with him this week that wasn't there in some of the previous weeks. Gave him more than half the game, and Pharaoh Brown basically didn't play. So obviously Noah Brown missed 3 games earlier this year, but he still ended up playing more than half the season. If he had avoided the injury, he's probably well over 60%. So you can see that he was out there plenty. He got plenty of opportunities, and the numbers just weren't really there. He had a good game yesterday, and he's not a bad player, but I don't think you can justify paying him this amount of money anymore. So I don't think he's going to be back next year. And Pharaoh Brown, it's not a big deal, but he definitely, I think, ends up being one of the big disappointments of the 2024 season. You did pay him over $3 million expecting something from him, and he played less than a quarter of the offensive snaps, was not very good as a blocker, and barely touched the ball. And when he did, he had a crucial fumble that nearly cost us the Bears game. So not happy about that. And Barner, obviously his snap count is boosted pretty heavily by the fact that Fant missed a few games, but he played almost half the season as a rookie. And there were times where it was pretty clear that was unreasonable to ask of him, but he found a way through, and he contributed and had a good season. I'm excited to see what happens with AJ Barner next season. I think he's going to develop into something good. And then we had a couple other guys get an insignificant number of snaps. Nothing to say there. Offensive line, very simple this week. All the starters played the whole game. Cross, Tomlinson, Oluwatimi, Lomia, Gerald. Mixed thoughts on how those guys played. I think Cross had one of his lesser games of the season. I think that I didn't notice as much bad stuff from guys like Gerald and Lomia. I do actually think that Grubb did a decent job yesterday of hiding those guys and protecting them, but that doesn't mean they were good. It just means that the way the game was called was a little bit more understanding. So you look at the body of work this season from the offensive line. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 players that played at least 100 snaps, at least 150 snaps actually. And then Fant and Sundle played a little bit as well. Not necessarily a recipe for success to have that many players playing significant snaps for your offensive line. So hopefully we get more stability in 2025. But shout out to Charles Cross and Laken Tomlinson for basically playing the whole season. Now, I wasn't thrilled with the way Cross and Tomlinson played for, well, okay, this last game for Cross, I thought it was a little bit rough. And there were a couple other games where I thought Cross could have played better. But Tomlinson, consistently, I wasn't thrilled with the way he played. I'll put it to you that way. I think that's a fair statement. And everything else is just kind of, this is why the season went the way that it did, right? You got pretty much every snap from Cross and Tomlinson on the left side, but center, 3 different guys played non-trivial snaps for you. 2 guys basically split the season. Right guard, Anthony Bradford played about half the season. Christian Haynes played a little bit. Lomia played the rest. It's like, it's not a recipe for success. We tried 4 different players at right tackle. That's hard to win with, admittedly. All right, defense. Let's jump over to the defense. 66 snaps in this game. So definitely more snaps on defense than offense. The defense did not play well. They deserved to play those 66 snaps, and they end the season having played 31 more snaps than the offense, which that's about half a game's worth of snaps, so it's not terrible, but we're not where we want to be. I think as a team, you definitely want to be playing significantly more offensive snaps than defensive snaps. You will probably be having success if you're doing that, and we didn't do it. So, something to work on, but progress is being made. So, the defensive line, let's just start with this game. Leonard Williams gets 53 snaps, which is the most snaps he's played since the midway point of the season. I think this was the Rams overtime game that he played 58 in, played 59 in the Niners game, but 53 was a little bit beyond what he had typically been playing, but roughly in line, not radically different. 750 snaps on the year, played less than 2/3 of the snaps. I like that. Now, if he didn't miss most of the Miami game and all of the Lions game, certainly this number would have been closer to like 850, and the percentage would have been, what, 75% at least? But he's our best player. He's the best player on defense and probably the best player on the team. He's going to play a lot, and you're paying him like a guy who needs to play a lot, so it's not a bad thing. But I hope personally that next year the depth works out better to where maybe if he plays all 17 games, he plays 70% of the snaps. I think that's where you want to be. He's too good to keep out more than that, but you got to find a way to allow him to ease into the latter portions of his career. You don't want to be working him too hard and then he ends up having a shorter end of career because he played too many snaps. Byron Murphy basically didn't play in this game 3 snaps and then he checked out of there, so whatever. Ends up playing about 40% of the snaps on the season, just over 450 snaps. And if he didn't miss basically 3.5 games, call it, in the early part of the year, and then this last game, it obviously would have been a pretty good amount higher. He probably would have been pushing up close to 50%, which is about where you want to be. I think people forget. And look, I am not the biggest Byron Murphy fan on the planet. I'm not even saying this as some kind of Byron Murphy homer. He is very young. You don't want to play that guy 60% plus of your snaps. You don't want to give that guy massive burn. He had one game this year where he went over 50 snaps, had a handful more where he went over 40, and that's good. And we were able to get away with that despite not really having much defensive line depth. So that's something that I think deserves some commendations for. And Jarran Reed, he lives exactly where I suspected he would live once it became clear that we didn't have the depth. He ends up at about 60% of the snaps on the season, 40 snaps in this game. That's about right. I don't know if his Seahawks career is over. I don't know if his NFL career is over, but he played good for us. Really good season for him. Really happy with him. 60%, that's about right. Hopefully next year we have better rotational depth and he can get that down to like 55 or 50 even if he's back. You just want to let these guys ease into their old age. They can still contribute, but not if you overwork them. And knowing that he played almost 700 snaps on the season, you got to figure out, okay, how do we get that number down to like 600? How do we get that down to 550 maybe? Mike Morris played 3 snaps, but he's obviously a complete afterthought on this team now. He only played a little bit because the Murphy injury kind of forced our hand. The fact that he only played 3 snaps in this game speaks to how little we think of him at this point, which is really disappointing to me. So I don't even think he's going to be here next year. Jonathan Hankins played a lot, as did Roy Robertson Harris in this game, because again, we were forced to make up for the missing Murphy snaps. Hankins does end up playing a pretty respectable amount of football for the Seahawks this year, but it felt like as the year went on, we tried to shelve him more and more. That Bears game in particular stands out. That was a game where he basically didn't need to be on the team, played 7 snaps. So he just doesn't have much left in the tank, and he gave us what he could. Played about a third of the season, slightly more. I mean, it wasn't a bad idea to have him around to do that. He just was able to contribute so little. And Roy Robertson Harris plays 20 snaps because, again, we just needed somebody. And being on the team for about 2/3 of the season, Gets up to about 17% of the snaps. Not what you're looking for. If you're going to trade a draft pick for a depth defensive lineman, you should expect a little bit more out of him, especially in a season where you do have some legitimate issues here. Like Murphy missed the last game of the year. You have Jaron Reed getting older. You have Leonard Williams on the wrong side of 30. Jonathan Hankins has nothing left. This is an opportunity for Roy Robertson Harris to expand his role, and instead, he did nothing but lose playing time until we got to the end of the season, and the last game of the year demanded his presence because of the Murphy injury. So less than 200 snaps for Roy Robertson Harris. I said at the time of the trade that I don't really care that much about a 2026 fifth-round pick, but I don't think we got the value back on that trade. I just don't. Like, less than 190 snaps, that's, to me, I don't see how Mike Morris would have been that much worse if you had just given him those snaps. Or give some guy off the street those snaps. Give Miles Adams those snaps. What's the difference? Linebacker, pretty simple. Ernest Jones plays the whole game. Tyrese Knight plays all but 8 snaps. So he ends up playing about half the season, by the way, which is really impressive. Played about half our defensive snaps this year, just under. And he has overachieved massively in my mind. And Ernest Jones basically played every snap after he got here. He only missed a handful. So he's going to be, assuming he's here next year, and I think he will be, full-time guy. So pretty excited about that. You can see that how much Baker and Dodson ended up playing before they were out of here. And then you got a little bit of Drake Thomas. So that's really all there is to say, all there really is to report. You would expect about these snap counts for linebackers. Hopefully next year we have stability. We ended up giving more than a half and more than a quarter of the season to 2 linebackers that just didn't fit. They're not bad players. Maybe Baker is, because physically I think he's shot. Dodson is not a bad player. It just didn't make any sense the way we were doing things here, which was disappointing for sure. All right, edge rusher, pretty good spread this week. Nwosu led the way with 38 snaps. Then you had Draymond Jones with 30, Derek Hall with 31, Boye Mafe with 28. That's real nice. That's a real nice balance of using your top 4 guys evenly. That's the kind of stuff I was hoping to see all year. Unfortunately, we couldn't because Nwosu missed most of the year. Mafe was probably playing through an injury, so they did what they had to do. But in this last game, you saw a little bit of what it could be rotationally. Now, in terms of their play, not so great, but that's a separate issue. That's a player thing. So, on the season, I gotta say, I was pretty impressed with the way they balanced it. You got Derek Hall, having played the whole season, didn't miss any games, played just under 60% of the snaps. Draymond Jones, having played in every game this season, played just under 55% of the snaps. And Boye Mafe, who did miss a couple games and probably play hurt in many of them, played about 54% of the snaps. So that's a real nice rotation. That is, I think, what a lot of teams in this league want to do. Obviously, if Nwosu was involved, you'd probably shave some snaps away from Hall and Jones and maybe even Mafe because he got hurt. And you might be talking about something where it's like Nwosu's playing 60%, Mafe and 55, Hall 50, and Jones maybe more like 45. But theoretically, this is good. The question is, are the players going to be good enough to do what they need to do next year? Because if you're playing this sporadically as an edge rusher, you're not even playing 60% of the snaps. When you're on the field, you need to make beautiful music happen. You have no excuse to be tired at the end of games or at the end of the season. You're getting paced. So that's good. I dig it. The other 2 edge rushers that played this year basically weren't on the team after week 5. Gibson, Bowser, irrelevant. Not much to say. Cornerback. Witherspoon played the whole game. Woolen played about a quarter of the game and got hurt. Slightly more. Trey Brown played a fifth of the game. Got hurt. Looked really bad, by the way. Pritchett ends up getting thrown into the fire, and he looked really bad, too. A lot of corners on this team did not look good, and I guess Artie Burns was whatever, played more than half the game. I mean, good for him finally getting on the field. Hasn't been on the field since the first Niners game, but pretty good, pretty decent final game showing for him. And we were just kind of scrambling to make things work because our corners kept getting hurt. What are you going to do? So Witherspoon basically plays the whole season. I think most of the snaps he missed were garbage time. I don't know if he got hurt this year at all. I can't remember. Maybe he did, but he only missed a couple of plays. Woolen plays just under 80%, and you can see that's because he mostly missed the 2 games. So we got pretty expansive seasons from both the starting corners. And I do want to give credit to Josh Joby for playing about 40% of the snaps this year, despite being a complete afterthought on this team before the season started. And you can see that we needed it because Trey Brown was basically a ghost after the 3-game losing streak. Pritchett, we tried to play him a little bit earlier this year because of injury. He's not ready. Maybe he never will be, but definitely not ready now. And that's really about all there is to say. The only other corner to play significant snaps was Artie Burns, and he only played in 2 games. So, I mean, in terms of snap counts, not bad. Now, in terms of play, it depends on who you ask. Witherspoon overall did have a good year. Joby did have a surprisingly effective year. Woolen started out good, ran out of gas. At this point, I'm not very happy with where he is as a player, but we got an off season to try to piece that together, and he's still cheap for the moment, at least. All right, safety, wrap it up here. Very simple. Love and Kobe play the whole game. Rayshon plays a third of the game, which that's probably pretty sensible. Now, the way Rayshon's playing, I could have maybe done without him playing any in this game, and it's just not working here, but it doesn't need to anymore, so no point in hating. He's a decent enough player, probably just getting old. And, yeah, you see the way it broke down. Julian Love played basically the whole season, 95% of your snaps. Commendable. And I think he played good overall. It wasn't perfect, but overall played pretty good football. Kobe Bryant ends up playing 70% of the snaps, which is impressive because early on he was basically a 4th safety with a little bit of corner burn. And then when he took the starting job, he never let it go, and I thought played good football consistently. Rayshon ends up just under half. Kayvon Wallace, haven't heard from him since midseason, but did play about 11% of the snaps. Okada filled in a decent amount against the Niners that second time, and that was about it, and that's about all that's significant. So that's your snap count. That's it for the season. That's it for Week 18. That's it for Game 17. So those are the facts. Those are the numbers. Let me know what you guys think. See you guys later. Go Hawks. More videos coming soon. But that is the end of Snap Count Monday for 2024. The 2024 season, at least. And we'll do it again next year. See you guys later. Go Hawks.